Welcome to the Interzone Roadmap Pitstop November 2019 edition. This is the bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related Microsoft 365 technologies? This month, I talk with DC Padur. He is a senior program manager on the SharePoint engineering team focused on all things intranet and employee engagement. We'll talk with DC all about one of the most anticipated releases for the intranet, beginning to roll out this month, SharePoint home sites. Very exciting. Consider this the message center for everyone, not just for cloud admins. We'll keep everyone informed, current, and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. And here we go. Before we dig into everything that has rolled out this month, I want to call to your attention everything that we just disclosed at Ignite 2019. I won't go on and on about it because we'll certainly cover it each month as things start to roll out. But mostly in the show notes, I'll put in links for all of the sessions that we had, all the blogs, all the tweets, and of course, just to note that the Microsoft 365 public roadmap is now up to date with everything that we've disclosed across SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, and Stream, and of course, the rest of the company. So there's a ton of new information on the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, and we'll make sure to link to the critical things that are relevant to all the things that you expect on this particular show. So with that, let's dive into employee engagement. I'm going to spend almost zero time on the first topic because that is what DC is here to share with us. That is SharePoint home sites. A home site is the top landing page for your organization's intranet. You can designate any communication site to be a home site with a simple PowerShell commandlet. When you make a communication site the home site, it'll be more discoverable from both the SharePoint start page, which we'll talk about a little bit more with DC, and of course some new experiences through the SharePoint mobile app. In addition, it will serve as the source of authoritative news for your organization and will be automatically set up for organization-wide search. So a lot more details when we talk with DC. Very highly anticipated feature and release. Can't wait to dig into it a little bit more. Hold on to that thought about SharePoint home sites. The next item is Save for Later. Save for Later allows you to keep documents that are of interest to you to easily retrieve later. Clicking the bookmark that is the Save for Later icon makes it easy to get back to a document no matter if it's in your OneDrive or in a shared library. Now, documents that are saved for later are accessible both in the Saved tab in OneDrive and on the web. It shows up also on the SharePoint start page next to your Saved News, and it's a collection of saved news and saved documents mixed into one from the SharePoint start page. So if you've got something that is of interest to you, you don't have time, save it for later. Next up is really a back-end service that applies to how files can be used throughout Microsoft 365. So we're pleased to start rolling out in preview that SharePoint and OneDrive now support sensitivity labels. This uses the Microsoft Information Protection-based encryption, and it's associated with a sensitivity label. The encrypted files are treated much like regular files, and users can open, edit, and do all the normal things that they do with Office on the web, like co-authoring. But SharePoint recognizes these sensitivity labels as they're applied to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint files that are, of course, stored in either SharePoint or OneDrive. When you download a file, also from SharePoint or OneDrive, the sensitivity label does travel with the file, and all the settings that remain are, of course, enforced no matter where that file goes. So from an IT perspective, you govern these encrypted files with things like data loss prevention and e-discovery type policies, and all the enforcement that you would expect are available per the governance plan and design that you put in place, but with the greater flexibility of productivity that you expect, so people who need to work with these sensitive files aren't limited in how they work with the files. There's a great link that I'll put in the show notes for how you can learn more about SharePoint and OneDrive sensitivity labels. So let's take a pause. I know you've been wanting to learn a lot more about SharePoint home sites, and DC is here to give us all the insights into planning and the delivery of how people are actually starting to use SharePoint home sites in Microsoft 365. So let's turn to get to the real money information about SharePoint home sites. In the studio, we've got DC Padur. As I mentioned earlier, he is a senior program manager on the OneDrive and SharePoint engineering team, and he is focused currently on SharePoint home sites, making sure they roll out well, but you've also planned, designed them, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes behind it, so really interested to pick your brain. But first, just tell us a little bit about who you are, who is DC, and how did you get to this point of your career from a SharePoint and Microsoft perspective?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on this Intrazone podcast session. It's really exciting. It's my first time on this, and I'm really thrilled.
Well, welcome to the Intrazone.
Thank you. So I've been with Microsoft for about over 9 years right now. 9 years since October. So 9 years in Microsoft. I started out as a developer. Interestingly, I did not know there was a role called program manager when I joined Microsoft as a dev. And then I got to Microsoft, and then I discovered this entire big world of software development, and I sort of naturally gravitated towards being a program manager. And then 7 years ago, I started my journey with SharePoint as a program manager. So I was a front-end UI developer. I became a back-end program manager, services program manager. So like as diagonal opposite as you could go. But it was an exciting journey. That was the time we had just launched SharePoint 2013. We were getting to becoming stable and reliable and big in the cloud at that point. And since then, I had been working on a lot of the internal cloud infrastructure systems, developer tools, making sure that the SharePoint product stays up and live and updated. That was sort of my journey for 5 years since I started. And about 2.5 years ago, I wanted to try my hand in something new, and I moved to the SharePoint front-end world. It was a move inside the team. It was excellent. The team was fantastic. They helped me quickly ramp up. And my first project since then has been home sites. So we actually have been working on home sites for 2 years. And I want to explain that. Home sites is actually an umbrella of features. So we started out with the journey of 2 years ago, we had introduced modern SharePoint, communication sites had gone live, and there was a lot of momentum towards helping our customers realize their internet needs on modern SharePoint. And we spent quite a bit of time. We actually spent a design sprint session on trying to understand what does it take to help our customers have the best internet experience, which includes typically the top of their internet landing page, the one important site that all organizations value a lot, spend a lot of time branding, curating the content. They're in fact proud of that, and they use it to develop their community. Like we wanted to treat that as special as it is and trying to understand what does it take to help our customers have it on modern SharePoint. And then there were a lot of features we decided had to be table stakes that we had to build that was not existing at that time. Mega Menu, for example, it's very popular with our customers. And that feature was born out of the need for supporting the home sites of organizations. And then there was the site footer. And then there was audience targeting. And then there was more paged constructs like the vertical section, more news web parts, and more branding experiences with the site header, and more theming options using section background colors. So all of these features came together, and then we built out the product truth, the basic capabilities of communication sites to help build top-level portals in our organizations. And then we took a step back and we thought about what does it really mean to have the top-level landing page? How can we help our customers have a great experience? So a part of having the landing experience is obviously the design and actually building the site. The next thing is making users visit the site. And a lot of our customers have had trouble in the past. So they've spent a lot of money and time building the site, but then no one visits. And we have tried to figure out what does it take for that top-level home site to be useful and accessible or available wherever users are? And that was the genesis of the entire idea of home sites. And our bet with home sites is we build up the out-of-box capabilities to help you land that one site. And then you make it a home site to make it extra special and makes it more available to your end users so that they can benefit from having information from the organization right next to where they get their jobs done. And that's what home sites is about.
And home sites is truly a culmination of work. You said you've been working on it for a number of years, but the modern internet has been, something that's been paving for quite some time. Just the notion of better web parts, better mobility story, the way that you can build out sites and obviously move and maneuver content, adjust permissions, top-level sites, mid-level sites, all the way down to team sites. All that plumbing, and this is where I want to get back to where you started. Some of that is reliant on that back-end service so that you can scale out to the nth degree. Each customer has maybe one site. Maybe they've got thousands of sites. And, of course, the performance, reliability, all of that is absolutely crucial. And if I heard you correctly, and certainly I know how we position it, is when you prop up a home site, and at this point, that might be that parent landing site, it inherits everything that you've been working on for a number of years, out of the box, by default, and then it is configurable to, of course, make it your own. When you think about home sites, not only just the parts and pieces, but how customers are actually starting to use them. I know you've got, early customers that you're working with. You've designed it so that it works in a certain way. But how do you see customers starting to adopt what, maybe they've had for a couple of years with communication sites, but now really coming to reality of that last thing they were wanting to do?
Great question. So absolutely, this has been a journey, and we started with the first thing of communication sites and enhancing it over a period of time. And when we did take a step back and look at what does it take to win the top of the internet, which is your top-level landing page, the parent site, and what we now call the home site, performance has been top of the mind, and we looked at what does it take to make that experience seamless. How do we make sure that folks, users in an organization that access content can seamlessly go between experiences, not having to endure full page loads and opening stuff in different tabs? These have been pet peeves of our customers from before, and we know, and we've been tackling that, and packaged with the home sites, those experiences have been rolling out as well. But performance is one of those horizontals that are constantly need to be improving. And while we make innovative things, and we'd like to delight our customers, delight our users when they discover, hey, look, it is super fluid now. It is fantastic the way it loads between the start page and my home site. And those are things we would like for users to discover as well and be excited about that. And when I think about the customer's journey, so the communication sites were sort of launched as hey, it's easy for anybody to work with. SharePoint is no longer this behemoth that needed PhD to understand how to make it look pretty. And this was pretty out of the box. It was functional out of the box. It was useful out of the box. And communication sites built on that concept of anybody can create a site in SharePoint and use it to communicate with the rest of the organization. And then we introduced the hub site. The hub site was to help our customers organize their intranet. And then now we're talking about home sites, and we're rolling out home sites that helps you actually build the top of your intranet, the sort of the cherry on the top of your pie experience that shines brightly, and it's the most unique experience in your organization. So even if customers have already built their communication sites, we've made sure that all of the new experiences are compatible with those. And when the site administrator, your communications team, all of you get together and decide, hey, I want these new features and experiences on my existing communication sites, you are free to do that, and it'll work absolutely beautifully. And you can have this enhanced experience on your existing communication site as well.
Okay, so let's take our listeners through a journey of a true and false. I'm going to ask you a question. You tell me if it's true and false. And hopefully we'll paint this roadmap of how you get to actually using the home site in the place that you want to use it. All right. First question.
Is that the only choice? True or false? Is that a maybe?
True or false?
Can I dial a friend?
You can dial a friend if you need to. I'll give you time. Maybe we can edit out the call.
Okay.
But if you need to, certainly you can call.
Let's do it.
All right. So true or false? I can create a communication site within seconds today.
True.
If I want to deem that communication site the root site of my entire tenant, I can do that with a simple PowerShell command.
True.
If I then want to take that communication site that's now my root site and I want to up-level it to be my SharePoint home site, I can do that.
True.
Now, if I want to that SharePoint home site, add hub site capabilities so I can organize other sites underneath it, can I make my SharePoint home site a hub site?
Yes.
So if all of the above is true, then I have a pretty powerful root site uber landing page that is pretty much has all the bells and whistles of what you would want to offer every employee at a company.
Absolutely. And that's been our driving force. That's been our guiding principle here, is to make sure that all of these are additive experiences that can help enhance the productivity, the discoverability, and the functional value of that one home site. And that's you put it together fantastically.
Yep. And as a part of that, the work that some of the other teams are doing is to make it so that consistent theming, if you think about theming in a SharePoint home site, no different than any other site.
Absolutely. There are two ways to look at this. We've made it easy that you could have a consistent theme across your home site and all of your sites. But you could also think of a scenario where you want to up-level your home site with that extra branding experience. You could do that as well with our out-of-box capabilities and site scripting capabilities. So we've tried to make this sort of a collection of capabilities, and depending on your organizational size and your preferences and how you work experience, your global presence, you can determine what suits you and make that available in your home site.
Very nice. So as we kind of wind down here, there's two things that I want to relate it to, and I'd love to get your feedback that I think will help with just a little confusion, because with some of the naming changes, there might be just that little bit of confusion, and then to really land with mobile. But first, one of the things that sits side by side with SharePoint home sites is what we now call the SharePoint start page. But can you talk a little bit about the history, for people that have been in the cloud for a little while? That used to be called the SharePoint homepage.
Absolutely, yes. For people who remember the SharePoint Online experience from a while ago, the experience that a user gets while clicking on the SharePoint tile in the Office.com experience, or the SharePoint logo or icon in the app launcher for Office 365, what we call the waffle menu. All of that landing experience used to be called the SharePoint Home. It was one of our first modern experiences that was rolled out to our users, and it served an excellent purpose of wayfinding. Today in SharePoint Online, the best way to get back to the content that you've been working on is to get to your SharePoint start page, that SharePoint landing experience, and get back to your content, discover more information, and be more productive from that experience. When we started thinking about the name for the project that we were working on, the top-level landing page, I think the name Home Sites felt like it belonged in that category of being the home of all the users in an organization. That's where you have an affinity towards. That's where the best experiences are, and that's where the organization's branding and communications are best showcased. So we wanted to have that name Home Sites. And now what we did with the SharePoint, what was called the erstwhile SharePoint Home, was now renamed to be called the SharePoint Start Page. But more importantly, the integrated experience is of key value. As you all know, the SharePoint Start Page is an out-of-box experience. It is personalized to the user, but it is an out-of-box experience with its own static content and structure in place. But when you actually have a home site in your organization, the branding and the theming and the mega menu that I have in that home site, the footer that you have in that home site carries over into your start page. It makes your start page that much more valuable. And the idea here is that start page is where users go to discover, get back to their work. And when you make that available right next to your home site, you have a great value of having eyeballs on both the experiences. And it's a smooth transition experience between the start page and your home site. And that makes content that much more discoverable. You're not in the user's way of getting back to where they were and what they need to do. And you are also able to deliver the value of your important information and your branded content and your announcements and notifications. And that's sort of the package deal of having your start page right next to the home site, what we call as a superpower, one of the superpowers of the SharePoint home site.
Yeah, and I think the key word that you used was personalization. On the SharePoint home site, there will be an experience for individuals to see their content, things that are served directly to them because of the Microsoft Graph. And when they move to the SharePoint start page, it's as if they're expanding that view to see more of things that are purely tailored to them. But I think the best thing that you guys have all plugged and plumbed in to both experiences and really throughout Microsoft 365 is that notion of I am somebody, me, Mark, logged in, and I'll have a unique experience, and which really I think combats one of the things of the not modern intranet, which is it's not dynamic, it's not personalized. And the very last thing that I want to talk about with you is it was really hard to be mobile. So can you talk, I know one of them is just something that we announced at Ignite not too many weeks ago, but just your focus of these sites from a mobile perspective, and then maybe tell us sort of what's to come with home sites specifically in the SharePoint mobile app.
Awesome. One of the superpowers of having a home site is it makes that site a lot more discoverable in the mobile application, the SharePoint mobile application, both on the Android and iOS platforms. And when I say more discoverable, it's in the form of having a home button on the Find tab of your SharePoint mobile app, if you're familiar with the application. The scenarios that we were after is, imagine a brand new employee in your organization, and they just join your organization, and they've received their credentials, and as an onboarding guide, you tell them, your internet is available on the go. Download the SharePoint mobile app in your managed device and log in with your credentials, and you have access to the most important site in your organization. So in the mobile scenario, nobody has a chance to or nobody needs to remember URLs and how do I go find this piece of information. That piece of information, that site where all the information resides is actually at the tip of your finger in the form of a home button. That makes it a lot more discoverable. Nobody needs to know where your home site is. Your home site is the home button in your mobile application. It's your internet on the go powered by the SharePoint mobile application. The communication sites that renders also beautifully on your mobile app can also now be contributing towards your home site success. The moment you have a communication site made as the home site, all the users who have access to that site have mobile, the home button on their mobile application, makes it all the more discoverable.
I love to see, no matter how you configure the front page, the subpages, of course, across all the sites, if you've got a really dynamic Yammer web part, it shows it beautifully mobile. If I'm using anything with Power BI, the dashboards look great, and by default, you don't have to do anything, look great on mobile, and on through all different content types, documents, images, videos.
Absolutely.
So kudos, obviously, to you and then a lot of other people just to make it so that people don't have to build out the mobile aspect of their sites. Because we saw a lot in the past with effectively the classic publishing sites, people often didn't do mobile at all. So that meant on many devices, no access to SharePoint.
Yeah, and that's the power of the modern communication sites platform is it is mobile friendly from the get-go. It's designed to be mobile friendly. All of the out-of-box experiences are meant to be responsive at all form factors, and any device that you are accessing this experience on, it works beautifully, and it's also accessible. Being a global company and making sure that everybody is empowered to do more means that we want to have a product that is accessible from the get-go, and we are proud of having built on top of that capability.
Well, I congratulate you for getting to where you are now. It'll be very exciting the next couple of months to see how many home sites light up before Christmas and how many, in the early part of next year. But thank you for coming to work and taking us home. And thank you for coming and sharing all about. If people want to learn more about home sites or people want to learn more about DC, can they follow you on Twitter? What's the best way that people can get a little bit more information?
Absolutely. So a couple of delighters because I'm on Mark's intrazone right now. So by the time you are listening to this podcast, home sites would be available for all targeted release entire organization customers. So that's very exciting. So if you are in that program, you now have home sites capability. Just go run the PowerShell, set up a communication site as your home site. If you want to learn more, aka.ms/homesites. Takes you to the one place that has all the information about home sites. And when we have the next version, home sites is a system that we intend to continuously build on. I'm not able to reveal specifics here, but I hope to be able to come back on Mark's show here and share more details when we have it publicly consumable. And if you'd like to know about me, I'm on Twitter active. 99% I'm promoting SharePoint and Microsoft products. You can find me at DC Padur. That's my Twitter handle, and I'm happy to interact with customers through Twitter as well. I try to be as responsive as possible, but it's very interesting and challenging at times.
I've seen you active on Twitter, so I know truly if people have questions or just want to give you a shout out, they certainly can.
Absolutely.
We'll make sure to have your Twitter link in there. My very last small question, what does DC stand for?
Oh my God. Do we have an hour?
What's the short answer? It's not District of Columbia.
No, it's not. But that's what I tell everybody. When I go to Starbucks, I tell them the coffee's for DC, like Washington, DC. Because they ended up doing BC, like before Christ. So DC is not my name. It's just the name that most people know by. In fact, almost everybody knows. My daughter calls me DC. I don't know if I should be proud about it or not. My actual name is Divya Chapan. Mark, can you repeat it?
Divya Chapan.
Oh, very good. Very close. It's not that quite hard. But for some reason, even back when I was in India, I'm from India, nobody didn't want to say the full name. They just made it DC, and I was happy with that. I'm okay.
I think it's a great name.
Yes.
And, of course, it's easy to remember. But I'm going to get you. The next time we have an internal meeting together and I have a question, I'm going to say, hey, Divya Chapta, could you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, except me, nobody's going to turn around. I'd be surprised even if I turn around. I'm like, who are you talking about?
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the InterZone and sharing all the things about SharePoint home sites.
Absolutely. Loved it. Thank you very much, Mark.
So now that you've heard all about SharePoint home sites from all the good details and what DC shared, that really transitions us to move from employee engagement to teamwork. So let's talk about what are some of the new teamwork features and capabilities that are rolling out into Microsoft 365. The first one, pretty much as big as the SharePoint home sites is in employee engagement, there is the new files experience in Microsoft Teams. It's a huge part of teamwork and how people collaborate together with a rich files experience. Of course, there has always been the Files tab, and it has always been backed by a SharePoint document library, but really now it's bringing in that expected power of working with metadata, filtering and creating views, syncing files from directly within Teams, and of course a more beautiful thumbnail experience where you get a really rich experience across 320 plus file types. There's a lot more that goes into the new files experience as it is exposed in SharePoint, in OneDrive, now in Microsoft Teams, and even in Outlook. And as that becomes more of a pervasive, consistent experience, you'll see us talk about this new files experience throughout Microsoft 365. We have a great resource that puts a lot of visual nature to it. What does that mean and look like in Microsoft Teams? But really what it means is as you start to learn and experience how to work with your files in Microsoft 365, it's consistent with all the same capabilities no matter where you're interacting with those files. So it's learn once, use everywhere. The next aspect of teamwork is Power Apps. We've had Power Apps integrated with SharePoint lists, and now they're coming to SharePoint libraries. Gives you that ability to take over and create custom forms in how you either want to showcase information or when you want to collect data and input information. So with that same capability of how you can customize forms for libraries or lists, it really up-levels what it is you can do with those forms. It's not only just a form. With Power Apps, you can actually build unique experiences, pull in external data, showcase and actually run as many applications on that form. But it really is so that you have control of how you want to represent data, both for input and output. The other key nature thing, similar to the new files experience, is now because lists and libraries are becoming a first level experience, no matter where you are in Microsoft 365. If you've created a Power App for a list or library, and you're looking at that set of files or that list in Microsoft Teams, the Power App will come along with it. So you'll have a great experience from that form, no matter how you customized it, or of course, if you've used it directly out of the box. So Power Apps, together with SharePoint libraries, and of course from the past lists, makes a great experience to create forms and experiences how you want to present them. The next one is the next level of innovation for file cards. This is when you hover over the name of a file. We've added this ability for conversations. So really what we're doing is continuing to improve the visibility of all activities on a file. When you view the on-hover card for files, there's a new pivot now. As you scroll down, you'll see conversations that showcase relevant emails, meetings, and Teams conversations. So imagine if someone sends you an email or you're engaged in a chat in Teams or just a meeting invitation that references a file that was stored in SharePoint or OneDrive, that conversation will be displayed in the file card with the link directly to that conversation. So imagine a couple weeks later, you knew you had a conversation around that file. You can click into it and see the rest of the conversation of what it is that you were talking about. The conversations are displayed directly in the file card as you hover, and when you unhover, they go away right back in the context of what you were doing. Last important thing, not just with file card conversations, but as this pervasive nature of being able to see a lot of content alongside other content, The conversations displayed on the file card will only be visible to those users who took part in them. What this means is, of course, you won't see another person's conversations that aren't related to the file in question, and they won't see yours. But file cards and conversations, a great way to experience conversations alongside the content. And the last feature that's in Teamwork is my favorite, but it's absolutely the smallest one of the bunch. So it's time to click out the clutter and focus. What this means is there's a new expand and collapse button for SharePoint lists, and it just appears in the upper right part of the toolbar for lists and libraries, where users click this button to make the content of the list or library take up more of the screen, which means it hides the site navigation, the site header, and all this stuff. If you click it to expand, will give you a lot more room to see your content. And when you collapse to navigate to some other content, of course, you just click it again, and it'll bring back the navigation and the site header. This is similar to what you see in Microsoft Teams and in OneNote, where when you want to clear away the clutter, click, and you can just focus on your content. It's a great new feature. Really excited to see it come in from a SharePoint perspective. Next, we move on to related technology, and I got about 4 items here. One is a pretty big one outside of SharePoint and OneDrive, but it's directly related to how this used to be rolled out. There is a new project, Microsoft project, that's now rolled out worldwide to customers. This used to be a technology that was directly built on top of SharePoint. So what that meant is within a site collection, you had an instance of the project, or what we called a project site. Now they're a little bit more abstracted from each other, and it's really the role similar to Microsoft Teams of when you're working with documents on a project from the project plan, you would be able to see, of course, those documents and interact with them. But those documents are stored in SharePoint, and the rest of project really moves into its own space. So there's a lot of new great details that you can go read more, but just so you know, the new project is rolled out full 100% worldwide to customers. The next one is something that's not yet fully rolled out, but it's something that we just have recently talked about at Build and a little bit more at Ignite this year. But in May 2019, we introduced the Fluid Framework, and we're very excited to go from disclosure to early public preview. And for some people who are developers, there's a specific private preview where you can start to actually work with the technology to design your own solutions. In the public preview, users will be able to preview the experience of crowdsourcing meeting agendas, taking notes, or simply keeping track of your thoughts, and having this be fluid, because if you wanted to copy-paste some of those elements into a Teams chat or an email in Outlook, or even on a page in SharePoint, it'll keep the context of where the information lives, but give you a unique experience of just the little component that you copy-pasted into that new space. You can get started by going to fluidpreview.office.com. But I did mention that there was a private developer preview, and this is really to give early experiences to developers to both learn how to work with the Fluid framework and to also give us feedback. And there's a specific place that you can go to if you go to aka.ms/Fluid Developer Preview. You can find a lot more on links that we'll put into the show notes to go learn about what is the Fluid framework, what does it mean to end users, and of course the developers' guidance on how to get started. The next related technology is something that's very closely related, but just for right now in OneDrive only, and it's new capabilities we call request files. This is really a broader part of our sharing notion. Usually when you have a file, you share it out. With request files, this is asking somebody to bring their files into your folder or your environment. So this feature allows users to essentially send out a request either as an email or as a link in a chat. And when the person who's the recipient clicks on the request files link, they'll be taken to a page where they can upload their own files, but they won't be able to see any of the files that other people are sending. So the one easy scenario here is if I want to collect a set of proposals from 5 different vendors, I can send them all the same link. They can send me each individual their own proposal. I will be able to see all 5, but none of them will be able to see the other proposals that are coming in. It's a great new feature. You're in charge of when you want to send out a request. You can close down the request link at any time. But if it's an ongoing thing, it's as easy as creating a link, and you might even have it as having a link in your email signature. Send me a proposal at any time. When somebody clicks that link, they'll be able to submit their files in that really nice, easy-to-manage way without exposure to all of your other files. The last one is something that I just want to put a little clarity around. It's really the Microsoft Teams announcement where they mentioned at Ignite in just a few weeks ago that they were releasing or starting to roll out private channels. And that's great for if you wanted to have a channel inside a team that's more private. You can easily set up the channel and, of course, segment the users that you want as a part of that team to be a sub-team or a smaller, more private channel to have conversations. Of course, within that channel, there is a unique set of files that they might be sharing within the Files tab of that private channel. And of course, within a private channel, we adhere to those same permissions. Only the people that are a part of that private channel would be able to interact with those private files. But to put a little bit more of a lens on it, what actually gets created on the back end is a unique site collection with a very distinct site template that is only available and only connected to that private channel. So there is a way for IT to manage just as you would expect any other site or set of files. There is certainly e-discovery and all the other things that can apply to it. But from an end user and a privacy perspective, it's a unique site collection. Obviously, it's really just the document library that's associated to that Files tab for the private channel. They did put out a lot of new information about private channels, both in the chat side and the content side. I'll make sure to have a link in the show notes so you can read a lot more. And if you have any questions, please do let us know. Next up, it's all about what is coming in December 2019. This is the time where I want to give you 2 teasers, and then we'll move on to talk about resources and wrap up the show. Teaser number 1 for this month is audience targeting. You heard DC talk a little bit about audience targeting in the context of SharePoint home sites, but pleased to talk about audience targeting in SharePoint Online for organizational news all up is coming next month. Teaser number 2 is there are multiple updates to the SharePoint Admin Center that are coming. If you looked or heard about anything that we announced at Ignite, some of those Admin Center disclosures are landing fairly soon, and they'll start rolling out. We'll make sure to have a lot more information about what particular features and capabilities are coming for admins in the SharePoint Admin Center. But there's a couple of them, and I'll definitely have links to a couple of roadmap IDs so you can get even more of a teaser to the teaser. But that is it. That's all with the teasers. We're nearing the last little part of the roadmap. Talk about how you can keep connected all year long. If at any time throughout the year you need a list of resources, we've got them here for you. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes based on this month's innovation. These links will assist you in learning more about the Message Center, the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, our SharePoint and OneDrive community blogs, and of course, all things Twitter, all in one place so you can get up to speed and of course, stay ahead. We hope you've enjoyed this month's Roadmap Pitstop, and certainly thank you to DC Padur for sharing more information about SharePoint home sites. Thank you for coming along for the ride. Thank you for listening to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop November 2019 edition. Stay engaged, ask questions, push us to get the best information and insights that you need. We're here to put our and your best change management foot forward. Stay safe out there on the roadmap. Till next month, thanks for tuning in.